Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian, your host, and I have the pleasure on this episode to be with our guest, Donna. Donna, first of all, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us and to share your knowledge. And just like I do with all of our guests, I'm going to ask you if you can please introduce yourself.
Kia ora, Brian. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to introduce myself in Māori because it's important that we know who we speak to. And it's also important that I acknowledge the aspects of myself that are important and connect me to the world. So that's what my introduction really covers. So we start off by introducing our mountain, our river, the significant places that are important to us, the people that I belong to, and who I am. So, ko taupiri te maunga, ko waikato te awa, ko tainui te waka, ko Weraroa, ko Makatu, ki Kawhia oku marae, ko Tainui te iwi, o ko Waikato te iwi, ko Ngāti Mahuta, ko Ngāti Tahinga oku iwi, hapu, ko Donna Kerridge tōku ingoa. So that is my mountain, my river, the waka the canoe that we travelled to Aotearoa, New Zealand on. That's my marae, our place of standing, our independent places of standing, and the people who I belong to, Ngāti Tahinga and Ngāti Mania, Ngāti Mahuta. So that's who I am. I'm a Rongoa Maori practitioner. I'm a registered medical herbalist here in Aotearoa. I'm also the mandated spokesperson for a trust called Te Kahui Rongoa. So that trust is the national collective of Māori healers in New Zealand. I'm also the director of my own company, Ora New Zealand, and I'm a really passionate advocate for our traditional healing practices here in New Zealand that we call rongoa, and their potential and the relevance for people of all cultures in a modern world that knowledge brings forward. I don't think the knowledge that Māori have is uniquely Māori. I do think it has a much closer affinity to Indigenous peoples around the world. No matter where I've travelled in the world, when I meet with the Indigenous people from that place, our conversations are very similar. So that's really who I am.
Wonderful. Thank you so much once again for being here with us. And one of I want to touch on so many subjects that you just mentioned, but I'm going to start from the beginning and ask you about your upbringing, about your connection and how you started being connected with these values and with this way of seeing the world from an early age.
Okay. So when I was growing up, a lot of what we talk about today as rongoa, as Māori healing, was never referred to healing when I was a child. I'm almost 60, so gives you some idea of how long ago that was. It's just what we did. You know, we don't go and explain to a child today, you need to go and brush your teeth. This is a very good health practice. We just tell them to go brush their teeth.
Yeah.
So it was pretty much the same when I was growing up. We used plant remedies, we used body work, we did a lot of karakia, and karakia is sometimes translated as prayer in English today, but that's not my understanding of the word. So for me, the term karakia was around before Christianity came to New Zealand. So it couldn't be an equivalent for Christianity.
Yeah.
To me, karakia is about reconnecting, about clearing ourselves to enable ourselves to feel the energy of the earth, of our people, of all of those things that make up that macrocosm to which we belong, or that bigger ecosystem. So it clears us, it keeps us safe, it allows us to concentrate, it allows us to join together, it clears the path for the work ahead. So karakia was a big part. We would karakia before we went to bed, we would karakia when we woke up, we would karakia before a long trip, we would karakia before anything important, before there was an important conversation or an important meeting or an important task to be done. So karakia was very much a big part of how I grew up. I guess in my teens I moved along like most teenagers, not too interested in my traditions or anything like that. And in fact, anything I could do to get away from it and go and do all those things teenagers like to do. I went off and I worked in the IT industry for a long time, and that gave me the means to be able to travel a lot and to be able to learn from other cultures, to be able to visit amazing places. And once I got a bit over that kind of work, I really did want to do something that was more meaningful. And so I went away and trained in health science and found that that didn't actually have everything that I wanted. There was more to it. There wasn't anything wrong with it. It just didn't feel complete to me. So then I reverted back to what I had grown up with and used the knowledge I'd gained from studying health science, plus all my travels, plus how I had grown up, and to the people that were now nurturing me to learn all of the things that are important when we're trying to help other people learn. So I was very lucky. I had some very dear teachers who I honour every day in the work that I do. So
Yes, that's wonderful. And it's such an interesting thing that you share, because each of us has a different path. And I find that always amazing how some of us are brought up with some of this knowledge, some of us are not, and somehow within our own path, then we can grow apart from it or grow into it or whatever it is. And it's all okay. It's all part of our own life journeys.
yeah.
And I wanted to touch on something that for me, since I came to New Zealand, I came to New Zealand over 5 years ago now, and I studied since the beginning to understand a little bit about Maori culture and about some of the values and the worldviews of Maori. I really connected with a lot of them because, as you said before, these are part of the indigenous culture's knowledge, almost similar, not the same always, but quite similar everywhere. And I really resonate with that, and how comparing to the mainstream Western conventional life path, it's very different because the Western world, at least in my view, has a lot of disconnection. And that for me is at the root of some of the issues that we are having now, both from an environmental perspective and a personal and community perspective. So I wanted to ask you if you can elaborate a little bit on where's the place of connection for Maori and for Rongoa, and what's its importance?
So I think to answer that question, I need to tell you a little bit about Rongoa and Māori healing and how we see healing taking place, because I think that demonstrates our value system and where our knowledge comes from and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I think from a healing perspective, Rongo Maori, or our healing practices, are never really about a diagnosis. They're never about a disease. They're always about a person and what that diagnosis might mean for a person, but not the diagnosis in itself. So the quality of the life of that person and working with that. It's really important that we focus on well-being rather than on cure. So death is a normal part, it is a part of living. So we don't do everything at all costs to try and prevent dying. I don't want to live forever. If I have to live forever, we'll never have babies. But there are no babies to repopulate and to grow the world and grow our different cultures. So dying is not seen as a bad thing for us. It's about restoring the life energy. We call it Maori, the life energy of people and of place. So, or planet, whichever you like to refer it, because, you know, somehow in the world we've come to think of ourselves as individuals, but we can't be individuals because we're all part of a bigger ecosystem, and within us is another ecosystem. So we can't fix what's inside if we're not paying attention to what's outside and what we are part of, and that's really important for us in Te Ao Māori, in the world of Māori. So, yeah, very much focusing on restoring that life energy. You know, I know people, I have aunts and uncles who are walking medical textbooks in terms of the disease they carry around with them. But not all of them would appear sick to people because their life force, their energy is good, their energy is strong, they still have purpose. They might not move as fast as they used to, they might not be able to speak as clearly as they used to, but they still understand that they have value to give and to share with the world. And quite often these people are saying to me, I'm sorry, I can't do that, dear. I need to go and look after the old people. And I'm thinking, my goodness, you are the old people. But those people, despite their diseases or diagnosis, there's no work for me to do there. They feel good, they feel energized, they feel connected. So it's not about saying, my goodness, you've got diabetes, uncle, you better slow down. It's not about that. It's about, is your energy good? Is your life force good? Is it strong? Because if it is, there's nothing for me to do. So it is really important, and making sure that Mother Earth, Papa Tuanuku to us, that Mother Earth is well. Because, you know, we have this saying, we have a lot of prophetic sayings in Māori. We call them whakatauki. And we have one that says, ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata. And that means if the world is well, then so too will the people be well. And conversely, if the world is unwell, then the people will be too. So we know that our health is dependent on Mother Earth and the environment around us. So unless we take care of her as part of our healing practices, then our work will be futile. So very much. The other thing too about the way that we see the world and the way that we know things, some examples, there's a lot more to it than what we can cover in a conversation here. But when we sit in nature and we learn how the world around us functions and how it functions well. So, for example, who heals the earth? Who are the healers for the earth? And if we look to some of our plants, the plants that come up after a fire, for example, after the earth has been scorched. Here in Aotearoa, we have a plant called kumaraho in the north. And that plant will appear almost immediately after fire in poor soils. And that's the same plant that we use to heal the people. For fire, for skin burns, for respiratory conditions associated with inhaling smoke, those kind of things. If we look to the hills and see where the land has slipped and ripped apart, who is the plant, who is the tree that will grow there in order to soothe the earth, to help hold her together? For us, that's the mamaku, the giant tree fern, the black tree fern. And this is the plant that soothes the earth when she's been ripped apart. This is the same medicine we use for our mothers after they've birthed a child. So when we learn how the world heals herself, when we learn how to heal our wetlands, our marshes and things like that, and we look at all the elements required for our swamps and our wetlands to operate efficiently so that they can clean the water, clean the rain that has landed on the earth before it goes back into our waterways, before it goes into our oceans. What are all the criteria that need to line up in order for that to happen? When we understand that, we have the blueprint for caring for our kidneys. Our kidneys form the same function as the wetlands do on the earth. And so we use Mother Nature as our blueprint for healing. And when we can sit and observe and be as one and understand and know how to care for Papatūānuku, then we know how to care for ourselves. And I guess my job as a healer is to empower people to be able to observe and participate and help the earth repair and restore. And in so doing so, they'll have the knowledge that they have to care for their families in a way that they would like. So for me, that's kind of what underpins traditional Māori healing. And I think it's important that we observe that many of us, Māori included, we're city born and bred now. And so some of us don't like the rain in our hair. We don't like the wind on our face. We don't like the mud between our toes. The little creatures of the earth we refer to as creepy crawlies. And those are all just signs of how detached we have become from nature. And as a consequence, we've lost the knowledge of how to stay well, of how to keep our families well, how to be a good citizen within the bigger ecosystem within which we live. We live in a society today where we value independence rather than recognize our interdependence. And if we could take a little more notice of our interdependence, both within our families, within our communities, within the natural world, then I think we will be more well. So that's just a little bit about how Māori see the world in terms of healing practice and what's important to us. And I think disease is really is little more than dis-ease with our place in nature. It's a reflection of that, and a reflection of our chosen ways of living in a modern world. And that's not to say we need to go backwards. I don't know that I want to go backwards. I don't want to spend all day foraging for my food. I quite like my lifestyle. But I do want to understand that really I only have the right to that which I need to survive, and to survive comfortably. I don't need more than that, and I have no right to more than that.
Yes,
so yeah, for me, that's what I think Māori healing is about.
Yeah, and I love what you just mentioned, like, and for me, if I'm not mistaken, Kaitiakitanga,
Yes.
being a steward of the land and taking care of her and understanding our place, especially in a time like now, that we cannot wait, that we need to take action. This is partly why with conscious action we do what we do, because we want to raise awareness of all of these different components of life. But then how do we take action? Because there's not that much time. And when we understand it from that place of connection, and we understand our responsibility to take care of the land, take care of each other, and this is for me one of the really deep and important understandings that I got when I came to New Zealand. And as you said, not everyone, Maori or non-Maori, lives by that, but I have seen many leaders that are acting like that.
And I think sometimes that's what makes them leaders, is understanding the bigger picture. Sometimes we think the bigger picture is the economics of our country or whatever, but then there are those in our world who see that there's an even bigger world than that, and that, you know, we need to be in service to other members of that community in order to be well ourselves. And so, yeah, I'm just really enjoying the fact that Maori are one of the youngest nations on earth. I feel for my father is English and also comes from Celtic heritage, and I feel for my Celtic cousins because they were the great healers of the world too. But we burnt them all in the 1600s. Anybody who talked like I talk was burnt. And, you know, we were only just been on this land for such a short time by then. And so we still live and breathe, or we have people amongst us who still live and breathe these things. It's not something we've learned from a book. It's not something that we've had, I don't know, 20 generations, I suppose, between the 1600s and now. So, you know, we don't have a gap of 20 generations of this knowledge. You know, this is the way my mother lived. This is the way I was raised. This is not new or missing. Some of us weren't raised that way, but it's only one generation leap backwards. It's not 20. So, you know, if people want to learn our way of knowing, our way as being part of the world and part of the community, then one of my teachers, Rob McGowan, reminds us constantly that knowledge is shared with us, not for our benefit, but for us to carry for those who may one day need it. And that's not limited to Māori. That, you know, we are all citizens of the world. And so, you know, carrying this knowledge, it's my privilege and my my gift, I suppose, to be able to share that with other people. And you know, if other people are not ready, if other people don't want to know that, that's okay. It's not my place to convince people. But if people who do want to know how we know things that nobody's ever actually taught us, but we know it, I'm only too happy to share with people who genuinely want to know that to help heal the world. Then I'm very happy to share that knowledge that comes from our old people. And our old people, we refer to them as tupuna, our ancestors, and that's anybody that's gone before us. And we say that we are the living faces of our ancestors, and we're just the end of a very, very long line, and we are here to carry on their work. And so best we do a jolly good job, because anything that we think that we suffer today, for whatever reason, is nothing compared to what was thrown at them on their journeys as we started, as people started to move around the world. So it really does energize you in the work that you have to do, because it is nothing compared to what my mother faced, what my grandmother faced, and so on back in time. So I've really got no chance of gaining any sympathy for what I might think are my perils in life today, with my automatic washing machine and my car and my supermarket and everything else.
Yes, and such an important topic about, I know for me, for many years I've been working with an understanding and relationship with my ancestors. And it's something that I didn't grow up with that knowledge so much, but for many years now, through my own healing journey, I started reconnecting with that power and reconnecting, as you say, of the understanding of those that came before me and also those that come after me. And
That's right.
understanding, for me, I always I remember that once one of my teachers mentioned about, if you look back 7 generations and you look forward 7 generations, the amount of people that are related completely to you, it's incredible. And if you, like he told me, if you think of that as perhaps in fourth generations, the person that is crossing the street next to you, that might be part of your same family in fourth generations. So how are you going to treat your family, even though now he's a stranger?
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, we are all family. Māori have a view, as do many cultures, not just Māori, that we are of the earth and that the trees and the birds and the stars are all our ancestors. And that's really important to us because I guess from a healing perspective, the people that I see in a modern day clinic that will come and visit me, most of the things that they come to talk to me about could be grouped quite nicely in 4 or 5 different groups. And they are all signs of our disconnection. So the first one is a lot of people who come and see me are lonely or have been lonely. And when you're lonely, you choose different foods, you exercise differently. If you have some sort of indiscretion that you don't know how to heal, you withdraw. And your physical health, as well as your emotional health, bears the consequence. And so that's what we see people coming to the clinic for. They don't come to the clinic because they're lonely. But a lot of what they're experiencing is as of a result of being lonely. Another one is people come because they've lost hope and they can't see a way out. And in our modern world, this is where we see our addictions. When people lose hope, this is where we see signs of suicide. And this is when people lack hope. Another one is when people are homeless. And I don't mean 4 walls and a roof. I mean people who don't know where they belong, where they truly belong. And for us as Māori, the word we have for that is tūranga waiwai, our place to stand, our place where we belong. And I think it's important for everybody in the world to know where they belong, to know that no matter what terrible things they might do in their life, there's somewhere that they belong, and nobody can move them on because they belong. And we learn to live with our family with all our strengths and all our weaknesses, and we learn to identify the gifts in other people, and that allows them to belong. We all have gifts, despite some of the things that are not so nice that we might do. So having a place that you belong is another one. The other one that stands out for me is to have a purpose beyond yourself, to have a contribution a gift that you were given on birth that contributes to the well-being of others, including our land. So quite often when we look for a way, we look past disease, we look to the person, and we will say to ourselves, you know, as a group, we need to be more inclusive, not exclusive. You know, I don't need a gate around my home. I need to be inclusive. I see people in a group who are on the edges, then we need to bring them in. That's what helps heal them. We need to inspire hope in people where there is none currently. We need to help people find their tūranga waiwai, to find their place where they belong. We don't have to go there. We just have to know it's there and its potential for us, that we have a right to be on this earth, that we have a place that belongs to our people. And lastly, we need to make sure that our children, right from a really young age, understand the gifts that they bring to this world. Because if we enable them to see those gifts and we reinforce them as they're growing up, that this person has a gift for being with animals. This person has the gift of a beautiful voice to soothe broken hearts. This person has a gift in the garden to grow food for those that most need it, to understand the gifts in our children, to reinforce them, means that when they get older and they teeter and they become a little bit unsteady in a modern world, they know the gift they bring, and that helps them stand solidly on the earth. So, and that gives them purpose, that gives their life purpose. And I think by being inclusive, by inspiring hope, by ensuring we know that we belong, and by understanding the gifts that we bring, that we contribute to the wider community, is where our healing lies. Those gifts to the wider community are our connections to each other and to the land. And when we deal to those things, much of what we call illnesses today will become invisible. We'll still get old and we'll still die. But much of the illnesses that we see today will not be issues for us.
That's so beautifully said, and I so connect with what you just mentioned, especially the last one that you mentioned. This is one of the things that I work with a lot of my clients, is finding what are your gifts, because each of us have that unique gift that we are brought into this world with. And this modern world tries to put us all into one box and tell us that we need to be something or do something specific instead of just being ourselves. And
Yes.
I'm with that, and I'm talking about this modern world. How do you see, because I mean, I have my view, but I would love your opinion on how do you see Rongoa Maori and the Western medical institutions, or just the Western medicine, and the way that they can coexist together, and not thinking that they are separate? Because for me, there is amazing knowledge on the Western scientific medicine, but a lot of lack of information on how to see what you just mentioned, instead of seeing those symptoms, seeing what's behind them.
I tell my students all the time, if I should be in a car accident and my leg should come off, please don't go looking for a tree, just give me some morphine. I think that Indigenous healing practice, what we call the modern medicine, Western medicine, that's amazing too. They're different. They're not in competition. One is not better and one is not lesser. And we should be grateful for the choice in our lifetime. I know that as a parent, if I were to live a couple of 100 years ago, and the risks that my children had to take and to bear in that time, I would have been very grateful for the choice of Western medicine. Very grateful. And for them to work together only requires one thing, and that is respect. If we respect, if I as an Indigenous healer have respect for my colleagues in the modern medicine or medical world and the amazing things that they can achieve today, organ transplants, things like that, then we're going to be richer. We're going to be richer for it. And if that respect is mutual, where Western medicine, all our chronic conditions, so conditions that we can't be fixed, that means that Western medicine doesn't have all the answers, or there would be no chronic conditions. And when we look beyond the disease and start to heal the person, then I think we have a better chance of making a huge difference in that ever-expanding space of chronic disease. And when we heal the soul of somebody, then those other things don't present anywhere near as badly or as often as we are seeing in a world full of disconnection.
Yeah. And would you say, I'm just going through this with some people, because I grew up with natural medicine, and at the same time my grandfather was a doctor, like Western medicine doctor. So I grew up in a sense with both, but a lot of people don't have that, and they were brought up with the medicines of the world. What do you say, or is there something that you say to people to be open to the natural remedies?
Well, I think that we as people know what's right for us. We are our own doctors. We are our own best doctors. And we know when something's right. I know when I pop a pill because I have sinus and I have what I think is an extremely important meeting that morning that I couldn't possibly miss. I know the consequences of what I'm doing. Instead of fixing the problem, I'm delaying it. And that becomes my choice. And like I say, I'm really grateful for the choice. I think there are some blocks. I remember telling some of my family that actually I'm going to pursue our traditional ways of healing. I'm going to take what our ancestors left us and do my best to apply that as they intended in a modern world. And I remember one of my aunts saying to me, "Oh my goodness, what are you doing that for? Go be a real doctor. What are you thinking?" And I was taken back. And then I thought about her experience as a child, where it wasn't good to be Maori, where we were taught that modern science was the way forward. And I think our parents and our grandparents saw the benefits of modern living. They also understood the cost to being Indigenous or to being a minority in your own country. And they wanted the best for us. And they felt that the best was leaving behind the past and moving forward. Over the years, over the decades, those people that really encouraged us to go seek a Western education, to go be successful in a modern economy, all of those things, as life has progressed, have started to come back and share with me some of their childhood. Because by revisiting and relearning some of the traditions of old, have given back their pride in who they are. And now they want to share that. And I can't get enough of that. I can't get enough of our old people going, "You know, dear, when I was young," and they start to tell you a beautiful story. I can't get enough of that. But they've had to go full circle on their journey of being Indigenous, then believing that that wasn't a good way to continue through the world or thrive, or for your children to thrive, to only have your culture elevated again and to feel that pride again, and then to contribute in the time that you have left to helping lift that up as well. So that's been great blessings for me, is to see, you know, our people do that. But for many years, many of my relatives were like, "Oh my goodness, what is she doing?" But now they're like, "That's my niece."
Oh, that's
So
beautiful.
it is. It's beautiful, and I'm very, very grateful for it. So, and I guess that for me, if you were to try and say what is Rongoa Maori in a sentence, for me, Rongoa Maori is about relearning how to live in a community, human and nature filled. That's the healing for me.
So important, that funnel, like, and finding, I know for me, coming and being by myself here in New Zealand, I don't feel alone. I don't feel lonely, because I have that understanding that my family, my tribe goes, not only the people that are around me, the people that are my housemates, my co-workers, they are also the land around me, my ancestors that are always behind me. And I think that for me is such an important thing to carry on. And one of the things, just going back to what you just mentioned about respect, do you feel like Western medicine is ready to be more open to teach this when doctors or pharmacists or whoever it is that is learning this? Do you see a change in the last few years of that, of more openness to that way of seeing medicine?
I certainly do. I certainly can feel the swell of wanting to change, or wanting to investigate other ways of helping people. We've still got a long way to go, but I don't feel like it's going to be long before we reach that tipping point. So that'll be, I hope I'm alive to see that day when we are definitely in a place where our counterparts in the modern world can appreciate some of the gifts that we have as well. And to be fair, probably my last year has been very much focused on working with the medical profession. And this evening, it's to go and to talk to some surgeons at one of our DHBs about how we collaborate, not integrate, collaborate.
Yes.
So, you know, probably of that work that I do in that space, it's probably up around 80% now is about collaborating with those who want to. Those who don't want to, I don't have a job convincing them. That's not my place.
Yes.
But for those that say to me, you guys are weird. How is it that you do this? And when they ask those honest questions, I'm only too happy to sit with them for as long as they'll listen about where I think the strengths are that we can offer those that seek our help, what we can give back to them collectively as well. I'm very much focused. Last year in a little town here in Auckland, we ran 3 workshops in the evening during the week where we had our pharmacists, our local doctors, our physiotherapists, our natural healers, and we did a community event 3 weeks running where people could ask each of us, you know, what they wanted to know about our professions, about conditions that they had, and were able to witness firsthand how well we respected each other and how we could work alongside each other to help them, and that we were prepared to do that. The community, I think, without doubt, was ecstatic, and the health professionals more so. They were blown away by the way that Māori think and see the world. They could see the potential. They were happy to ask questions about that just didn't make sense to them. We were able to have those discussions, and the entire community was invited, and the hall was filled every single night. So It was just wonderful. Now is the time. Now, and COVID helps that. We're, you know, in our own homes, we're isolated, and we're thinking, my goodness, I don't actually know that much. And if the internet went down, we had it. And so I think more than ever, people have been more receptive to taking back the healing ways of their ancestors. It doesn't have to be Māori.
Yes.
But if you're here in Aotearoa and you want to learn, well, then we're here to share what we know. And when we travel to your countries one day in the distant future, then we'd love to learn more about how your ancestors saw the world as well.
Yes, that's beautiful. And it's so amazing to see when people are open to that and when the community comes together and just asks questions. I think that is one of the things that through my education, I noticed that a lot of times I was quite inquisitive and I asked questions, and I was the weird one because I was questioning. And I think that a lot of times it's so good to understand there's no stupid questions. What I don't know, and I need to ask. But we are educated to be afraid to seem like dumb or stupid or whatever, or ignorant, and then we don't ask those questions. So it's really, really good to create those spaces. And with that, saying that, do you see, and you just mentioned the importance of going back now, do you see the young people more interested nowadays in traditional natural medicine in Maori and Rongoa Maori?
To be honest, not really. So maybe more so than before, but I would still say the real interest is coming from our people in their middle ages, our health professionals, so young health professionals, yes, but the majority are a little bit older. And I kind of understand that, because some of the stuff that I share and teach now, if people had have told me when I was 15, I would have gone, you guys are crazy. You guys are crazy. You think you can talk to dead people? You think dead people can guide you? You think you know stuff you've never been taught? How do you know that? You're crazy people. So I guess for some of those people, there's one or two that come through, which is great. But I would say for the majority of very young people, they're still living their life. They're still out there experiencing, pushing boundaries, doing those kinds of things. And so maybe in the 35, which is still really young, but maybe in that 35, 45 bracket, they become serious about learning this. They become serious about trying to protect the land. They become serious about their role in conservation. And I think our young people today, what I see is they're very, very much committed to the land, but they don't necessarily understand our connection to the land.
Yes. Yeah. I see the same. I see the same, and this is part of the reason why I don't just touch on environmental issues. I don't just touch on well-being and health issues. I try to bring all of that together because it's so interrelated, and it's so important to have that as an understanding of our connection with the land, with each other, and with ourselves.
If we teach our children very young, under 5, the importance of the flowers, the importance of the rain, the importance of ants, and not to see them as creepy crawlies, the next generation's going to be very different, I think. Yeah. Very different. I remember saying to one of my grandchildren, she would have been under 5, and I remember saying to her, oh, Nan's got to go away for a couple of weeks. I'm going to miss you so much. And she looked at me and she said to me, that's okay, Nan, you can just dream to me.
Wow.
So, you know, they know when they're born. They know this stuff. It's us that talk them out of it.
Yes.
They already know this stuff. So if we foster that, if we grow that in those very, very young children, teach them that they have gifts, reconnect them to nature right from the youngest age, then we're going to see a very different generation emerging soon. Yes. And I'll be really happy for that.
Yes, kia ora, definitely. And just because I know we could be talking here for ages, I'm just going to ask you a few last questions. Starting with, what is one resource that you would recommend to others? A book, a movie, or something that you think that would be valuable?
There's a movement starting here in Aotearoa called the Tiwaiwaka movement, and there's a little booklet. It has 6 beautiful principles in it that remind us of who we are, how we fit, and what our obligations are. I think that's the resource that I would recommend to people. You can get that through Organic Mechanic, through their website. You can access that book, or tiwaiwaka.nz. I think it's a beautiful little read, and it just puts everything back into perspective for me.
Yes, it's a wonderful booklet. Such a good resource.
I'd say written by a very beautiful man, but he would not take credit for it. He did write it, but he is very clear that what's in there are words from long before our time.
Well said. What is your one-to tip, like your one go-to tip? If someone asks you just one tip, what is that one tip?
I would say to remember that change begins with us, with ourselves. If we remember that we are the change, that no matter how small a change we make ourselves, it contributes to a very big change. So if we want to see change on earth, then it starts with us. Never mind telling everybody else what their function is, what their role is. Just make that change. Make a small change every day.
Yes.
That would be my go-to.
Yes, wonderful. Such an important one.
Mm.
And what has been your latest small act of kindness?
Cooking dinner for my daughter and her family last night, I guess.
Beautiful.
Yeah, they both work. And so just having the luxury of a bit of spare time to be able to race over and go, I'll go and cook dinner tonight. How about that?
Yes,
So,
that's wonderful.
yeah, just reconnecting with family in a way that's helpful and appreciated.
Especially through these times. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And last question, similar to the tip, but perhaps a little bit different. What is the one thing that you wish everyone in the world knew?
In the workshops that I teach, I remind us that every single thing that we do, say, or think matters, and that for every action in the world, there's a reaction that creates ripples, and those ripples become waves. So just remember that just because we can't see each other's thoughts doesn't mean that they don't impact on the world. And just because, it's deep inside of us doesn't mean it isn't relevant. So I would say it would be lovely if we all understood that every single thing, not just the things that stand out, but every single thing that we do, say, think, or matter has an impact somewhere else in the world.
Yes, Kiara, beautiful, beautiful. I love that. I love, a lot of times I talk about it as the butterfly effect. We don't know, and the ripple effect that we will have with every single action, thought, deed that we have. So important to be aware. That's why for me, developing awareness is one of the biggest things that I can do for myself and others. As you mentioned before, if I do the work with myself, then I'm already doing the work with everyone because we're interconnected.
But don't misunderstand it. I'm not perfect.
No.
Knowing and doing are two different things. But I think if we strive towards that way of being, our lives are all going to improve.
Yes, wonderful. And Donna, how can people find you online?
I'm really bad online. I do have a website. It's oranewzealand.com. That's ORANEWZEALAND.com. I guess if that's how you want to find me, that's or you can just Google me. There's Donna Kerridge. There's a lot of stuff people have put out there, so you can find me that way if you want to.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Donna. Such a pleasure to be able to talk to you and to listen to your knowledge and to your understandings, and for everyone to be able to learn a little bit more if they didn't know about these worldviews and about Rongoa Maori. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your knowledge and for all of the work that you continue doing. And I hope that more and more people do get interested in this way of living and do go to you to learn more about Rongoa Maori and natural ways of healing.
I think it's all inherent. It's inherent in all of us. We know when we hear things, when they pull on our hearts, and we know that they're right for us. And, maybe my message is not right for everybody, but maybe it's right for some. And somebody else's message along the same line will be more appropriate for somebody else. But I'd like to acknowledge you too, Brian. Thank you very much for the opportunity to share the gift of Rongoa Maori and to meet you and to listen to all the amazing podcasts that I've been listening to ever since you invited me on the show. I can't stop listening to them. There's some amazing people in the world. So
Yes.
thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And for everyone that has been listening to this episode, if there's something that you learned from it, I would love to know. So please comment on this episode if there's something that you have learned. I hope that if you're interested, go and search for Rongoa. Go to the forest, go to the land and connect and see what speaks to you. So we'll see you on the next episode, everyone. Until next time.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.